Set up. My name is Sonny Grint, and I am thrilled to be here. I am excited about our project today. I was just telling everybody here at the office that this will be a fun project for us. It's called an e-tablet or e-reader cover. And but we were talking, we're going to talk about all sorts of things you can do with this. So it's very, very fun. Again, my name is Sonny Grint, and I have a couple of helpers today. As Nicole said, if you have any like technical issues, that sort of thing, she'll be helping you. So just do that in the chat. Amy is here with us from Singer. So she is going to be dropping some things in when we talk about product or the machine, or if you have questions like that, Amy can help you on that. And then Vanessa is also here today for with Singer, and she's going to be helping answer questions like sewing questions as we go through. However, if it is something that everyone is asking or Vanessa wants everyone to know, she's going to let me know. So she'll either answer you in the chat or she will go ahead. Pardon me, goodness gracious, go ahead and let me know about any questions. So I think everybody, that's about it for me. I see we have some Floridians joining us. If anyone else wants to put in where you came from, that's great. I'm in Nashville, and so let's get started with our e-reader cover. So first, let's show you what we're going to make today. And it's actually really, really fun. These little pieces, so these are our tablet covers or e-reader covers. This one is a real basic little piece that just is using, if you have some fun fabrics like these little cactus, they're just fun to have on there. I've been searching around. Michael's, if you don't know, Michael's is now carrying fabric, and they've got some beautiful blue and gold fabrics online. They're just beautiful. So take a look, but see, you want like a contrast fabric. So you're going to have one fabric for your pocket, another one for the lining and the outside here. So you're going to choose a couple different fabrics for that. This one, a little bit smaller here. So this is a little bit smaller piece, but this was for an e-reader, but I just fell in love with this fabric. I thought this was really, really cool. And so I just put a stripe of the fabric in there. So you can make this kind of however you want it to be. For this one, because it is a little bit smaller tablet, I put in a pin. So I put in like a little, actually use it as a stylus on the tablet. And also there's a great place for my cord. So all of that, you can use that. It's really very cool how you can do those different pieces. So I'm going to stay on this camera for just a minute. So this is my little tablet here. And just by the way, I didn't realize that's a really great view of my overhead light here. So if you're wondering what that is, that's the light in my sewing room here. The very first thing you want to do is you want to figure out how big you need to cut your fabric. So what I did here, and I think I might still be, can you guys all read that? Go ahead and put in the chat if you can read that just fine. That's very good. When you have your tablet, your e-reader, whatever it may be, what you want to do, the first thing you want to do is measure it, right? So I'm just going to measure how wide it is. And I guess I should do this way for us here. So this is 5 inches wide by about 8 inches long. So if that makes sense. So the width and then the height. So 5 by 8. If you are, when you're measuring this and when you're making and cutting your fabric, I always like to just, if it's a little bit smaller, I make it a little bit bigger. So you might have seen that it was maybe 7 3/4 and I just said it was 8 inches. This is the first step and the important step. I'd rather have it just a little bit bigger than too small and you can't get your tablet in, right? So make sure you do that. For the size of your fabric. So for the size of your fabric, what you're going to do, and I just got everything set here, you're going to make the width is going to be your width here, 5 times 2 inches, so that's 10, and plus 3. That's going to give us enough seam allowance, enough to fold, that sort of stuff. So it's going to be 5 times 2, so whatever your number is, times 2 plus 3. And then the height, again, that 2 inches. So we're going to add 2 here, and that's going to give us, again, all of the seam allowances that we need for this piece. All right. So you're going to, I'm going to use some denim today, which I think is really very cute. So I have 2 separate pieces, colors of denim, I should say. So this is going to be my outside and my lining. So my dark denim is my outside and my lining, and my pocket is going to be the lighter denim. So you're going to have 3 pieces of fabric. One is going to be your outside, your lining, and then you're going to go ahead and have the piece for your pocket. Okay, so everyone, that makes sense? Got all of that? Because now we're going to just start playing around. And so what I want to share, one more thing with you over here on this camera, is I don't know if you noticed on this little example that I did, because I love this fabric so much, I just put a little piece right in the outside, right in the outside of my outer piece, the outside piece. So if you want, you can certainly decorate your outside piece, and we're going to play around with that. Today, I'm going to be using my Singer heavy duty 6700C. So I love this machine, and one of the things it has is it has a lot of different stitches. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, because what I want you to see, it's hard to see. When I pull this out, I think you guys can zoom just, oh, I might have went a little, that went a little wonky, but can you guys see? You can just see there's a few different stitches down here. If you have ever wondered, why in the world all of those stitches are there and how I want to play around with them or do different things like that, this is the time, because your e-reader cover or your tablet cover, carte blanche. You can do whatever you want on that outside. So you could make a quilt block, you can decorate with stitches, or just highlight the fabric. Okay, so it's really, really fun to be able to do all of those things. So this is the fun part. So let's go back to our machine. And what I did, I pre-did this so I wouldn't have to do everything for you guys. But what I want you to see, here's what I did. I had all of those ribbons that you have at home, or that you're going to get from Michael's, is all of those ribbons. All I did is I just sewed one of those ribbons on, and then I sewed single. So because it was so wide, I did on both sides. On this guy, I just used a decorative stitch in the center, and down at the bottom here, if you've never programmed on your machine, and that's one of the beautiful things about this heavy duty, the 6700, is it's got lettering that you can program in. So many options. So what I want to share with you is, let's do some playing around. I'm talking really fast, everyone. I'm talking really fast, everyone. If you have questions, certainly put those in. Okay, so if you have questions, put those in. But right now, we're just having fun. We're just going to do some decorating. So again, back to our machine. And with that being said, you can see how I've kind of already started. This is my test strip. So I'm always going to test. Do I like the stitch that I'm using? Do I want to change the stitch I'm using? How is that going to work? So I've already sewn the one side of this piece of ribbon. I want to share my other side, and I want to share what I did with the other side. So for those of you, there we go. You can see that pretty well, I think. This actually is a blind hem stitch. How many of you, okay, so how many of you guys have a blind hem stitch on your machine? Put that in the chat, because some of you may have a blind hem and say, I'm never going to use a blind hem. Well, guess what? You can make it this fun little decorative stitch. So let's go ahead. I am going to change my presser foot. Some of you who have come to my classes before, you know that presser feet are important. This is your normal sewing foot. Okay, so this is your normal sewing foot, everybody. And there's no room in the back. There's no groove in the back to actually sew over satin stitches or decorative stitches. This one, and this does come with my heavy duty, this is what's called the B foot. It is a decorative sewing foot. So look for a decorative sewing foot in your stash. And if you don't have it, this is good to get it because there's a groove. And that's going to allow all of my heavy stitching. Okay, so all of the heavy stitching, it'll just flow right over the top. So it'll flow real easy over the top versus this one can get stuck. So make sure you're using the correct presser foot. No, my hand is in the way for that. And there we go. Make sure you have the correct presser foot for whatever stitch you're using. All right. So now, make sure I'm going to do this right. When I choose a stitch on my heavy duty machine, I am going to look down here, and it is stitch number 2 in the second menu. So let's see if I can get zoomed in here a little bit more. And I'll turn my machine just slightly, so maybe you can see this a little bit better. I hate to do that because there we go. All right, you can kind of see here, you can kind of see there's a number 1, it says 3.5, and then it says 2.5 here. The 1 is the menu, so I'm going to change to menu number 2, and then I simply am going to choose stitch number 2 right there. And then my stitch width is 3.5 millimeters. It's just an average size, and my stitch length is 1.5. That's my normal sewing. What I'll do is I'm going to sew a little bit at this, and then what I'm going to do, and I'll explain now, I'm just going to take my stitch length a lot closer together, so making it smaller is closer together, and then my stitch width I'm going to make wider. Okay, so let's start with our norms. And I'm just going to sew a little bit. And then when I change, you'll understand what I mean when I change. So let's get down here so you can see what I'm doing. All right. And zoom in just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so if I'm doing this properly, I want to make sure that I'm like sewing right on the edge. And before I forget, I don't want to forget this. When you're doing decorative stitching on any fabric, this is kind of a soft denim. Can you see how that's kind of foldy and it's quite soft? I have placed an it is a stabilizer. It's an iron-on stabilizer, and Michael carries several of these. This iron-on stabilizer is really wonderful because it's going to help so my fabric doesn't pull when I'm doing the decorative stitching. So it's kind of important to have that stabilizer there. So here we go. So this is the norm for a blind hem, everyone. So this is the norm for a blind hem. And then I'm just going to, remember I already showed you, so I'm not going to change the camera. Now my stitch is a lot closer together. And it's a lot wider. And you'll see it here in just a minute. So you'll see a big difference in how the stitch actually looks. Okay. So can you see that? This is our norm. Look at that. It doesn't look even close to the stitch that we have down here. So by changing that stitch length and stitch width, you get a decorative stitch. So kind of cool, right? I mean, how many of you have played around with your stitch length and width? It is really very fun to do that if you have never done that before. And then I'm just going to choose a different stitch. And I'm just going to sew down the middle of the ribbon. This is the stitch I chose, but you guys, you don't have to use this stitch. This again is the fun thing to do. Let's get that thread. It's a fun thing to do and a great way to test out all of your decorative stitches. And I have to admit, I'm not sewing down the middle very well today. So, all right. Let's see. Just have, again, a really cute little stitch right here. Putting down ribbons. So I see someone said it looks like a great project to use up scraps. You certainly can do that. You can, again, you need a little bit for the outside of everything. So you definitely need to use that a little bit. But I will tell you, this is a really fun project. And the other thing that I did is I just want to share with you, I did program in earlier. So again, just zoom out a little bit, with our heavy duty here, and I love this. It is a narrow, the narrow ribbon sewn at the fold line, you can sew it wherever you want. I actually did not put it on the fold line. I just put it like kind of in the middle. So just wherever you want to be. And I programmed in our heavy duty 6700. It does have this great alphabet. So I know it's hard for you to see that, but there's a little alphabet here. So all I did, I was thinking about as a kid, and maybe my mom wanted to send me a fun, oh dear, oh dear. I wanted to see if you guys were awake. There we go. That's all I wanted to do. I'm sorry about that. Wanted to like send something that a mom put on my e-reader or put on my tablet back to school, something that I want my child to always think about. And so I went ahead and I just wrote smile. And so I thought that was kind of a fun little thing that we could do, you know, so your kids will always think of you, right? So anything kind of fun like that you can do and put on your cover. So sorry about the zooming in, that was very terrible. I apologize for that. I was concentrating so much on my machine. I wanted to make sure everything was okay there. Any questions so far? I mean, we're just playing, but stabilizer is important. Make sure that you test sew before you actually sew on your cover, right? So test sew before you sew on your cover. I don't think there's really anything else. I mean, if the only thing I would say is, again, I'm back to this little thing. If you do put in an extra piece of fabric, remember you have to think about the seam allowances, right? So if you know it has to be this big, you have to add a little bit extra if you're putting in your seam allowances. Okay, so just think about those couple things. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to this camera and we're going to see the next couple steps. So with this, as you know, when you asked about the ribbon on the fold, I just put the ribbon truly, it was random. I randomly placed these ribbons. I just thought it would look nice when I fold it, you know, when we fold it like this. That way you can basically, you can see it's decorated. I didn't do a lot of decoration. You can do as much or as little as you want for that. One of the other pieces that we talked about is actually fusible fleece. So you can see here, if I get that in there, you can see here that I do have the stabilizer here. when you get done doing all your decoration, then you're going to take fusible fleece and you're going to fuse that to the front cover or the piece that's going to be your front cover. So again, whether it's quilted, whether it's decorated like this or whatever it may be. So that once you have that done, you're going to set that aside. And then you're going to take your other piece that's this size. So this is my lining piece. Okay, so that's really my lining piece. And I had mentioned earlier that I had a couple different, two of the outside and then one different color. That is going to be your pocket. So what you want to do is you want to take that big piece, you're going to fold it and set it right down here. And that's going to be your pocket at the bottom. It calls for a square. Okay, so it calls for a square and you're going to fold that square in half and you're going to put that in up in one of the corners. I can't remember if it was supposed to be left or right, but it's just going to go up in one of the corners here. And then the last thing that we need is actually our ties. Okay, so those are going to be our ties. And with the ties, they just go right here. And I do recommend, because we're going to base this down. So we're going to like base these pieces together. So you're going to base it around here. We're going to base this other piece down. You have to be really aware. Okay, so you have to be very aware, and you can use clips or you can use pins or whatever you feel is going to work for you for this. And I know I probably just, there we go. Like that. You don't want to catch these, right? So you don't want to catch these pieces. So what I tend to do is I just lightly do just a little knot like that. So that way they're not going to flop out and I can feel and make sure that that's in a good place. Okay, so now I'm just prepping this. So again, you can pin if you choose, you can use clips if you choose, whatever it may be. And all we're going to do is we're going to baste along here and go up to here. And then I'm just going to base that in place. All right, so let's go back to our machine. And I'm going to try and zoom out and not make you as woozy as I did before. So once I have that set, I am going back to my regular sewing foot because I'm going to choose a straight stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to choose a straight stitch. And there we go. I like to make sure my threads are all underneath the presser foot, kind of to the back. When you baste, everyone, is everyone familiar with basting? Because basting is just using a straight stitch, but we're going to make the stitch length quite long. So we're going to make the stitch length quite long. And then the other thing that's going to be important is that everything is aligned, but also you want your basting to be a little bit outside your normal seam allowance. So make sure I've got that kind of lined up there. Set this down. And then you can see that well. All right. One of the other redeeming things, though, about basting, everybody, is it's easy to take out if you do see it on the other side. So if we do see it, we can always take it out. Okay, so I've got that basted in place. And now I'm going to come up to this side where my little corner is. And then and base that all together as well. When we get to the end, one of the things I love about my 6,700, is that gonna, did y'all notice? You probably can't, you could see my finger go up there. It has a needle down option that allows me to just basically put the needle down and be right in place where I need it to be when I'm turning a corner like that, which is fabulous. And then make sure everything is lined up here best I can. I have to admit, I probably should have pinned this more, but I was just trying to make it easy for us to see today. So don't worry about pins. And also that allows me to, that needle down allows me to put that right in place there. So you can, if you wanted to, you could go around the whole pocket. I'm not going to today just because of time. But now, if we go back here, now we can hopefully see that I didn't. There we go. So see how now this is in place. This is in place, and then my little pieces here are in place. All right. So I'm going to make sure I tie this again, because ask me how I know and why it's important to tie this. I have caught my ribbons in wrong places before. So you want to make sure that your ribbons are in the right place, because now we've got our lining with our pocket and our little top piece and our ties. We're going to take the cover, so that the front cover here that we decorated, and all we're going to do is we're going to place them right on top of one another. Okay, so now we're just making a little sandwich. And with that sandwich, we're going to now go to a regular stitch and sew all the way around. Okay, so we're going to sew all the way around. But what I want to share, and this is in, I think Amy and Nicole, both of you put up the write-ups for this particular project, but there's a little picture, a little diagram actually in the write-up. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to, you can see here, I'm going to actually start sewing on an end, and I'm going to sew in a little bit and then start sewing. And then go all the way around and then sew out. What that's going to do is it's going to make this turn easier for me. And it's going to give me a crisper way to do this opening. Okay, so this is a little tip for you. If you ever do any pillows or any sandwich things, always start and sew in, go all the way around, and then sew out. And we're going to leave, I'm actually going to leave, just because denim's a little bit heavier, I'm going to leave about 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches here as an opening. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as an opening. All right. So back to my machine. Everything's set up there. I'm going to do that. I am bringing my stitch length. The average stitch length for most machines is 2.5. So I'm going to take that back to a 2.5 stitch length. Okay. And so I'm going to sew in. There we go. So my needle is down. You can see that, I hope. Then I'm going to turn. Then I'm going to sew around. And when I get to the end here, that needle down, really, really wonderful. Turn. I'm being a little haphazard with what my seam allowance is here today, everybody. However, normal seam allowance for something like this is about 1/2 inch. And so use the markings or use the edge of your foot, but it's usually about 1/2 inch when you're doing like home deck projects or craft projects, something like this. Okay. I'm going up. can you understand now? I can't see my little ribbons. You can understand now why I wanted to be so careful and make sure that they were not somewhere that I'm going to catch it with my sewing. So that's, again, super important for that. Okay. Well, make sure you get that presser foot down. Again, I feel like, are you guys following me? No one's saying anything. I don't have any questions. I'm very confused here, everybody. So if you have questions or just comments, let us know. Back here to that end and turn. Okay. I'm trying to just make sure everything stays pretty even. I can always trim things off after the fact, so. Okay. Oh, don't you love that needle down? It just makes it so much easier. Right. So here's where I started. So again, I want to leave a pretty nice distance there so for my turn. And then again, I'm not just going to stop. I'm actually going to turn and come out. All right. So everybody, this is what we did. So we started here, sewed through all the way around with just a normal stitch. And then when I got to here, I sewed back out. And this is where we're going to turn. Okay. So any questions yet? Looks good. Everything's clear. Okay. All right. Very good. So now we are going to do a little trimming. And with the trimming, this isn't, so you can see here that I've got a lot of different things going on in this corner. To make sure you have a nice corner, you're going to actually trim straight across here. Okay, so trim straight across. And but don't, knowing my luck today, I didn't. You don't want to clip your threads at the end, right? So you got to be a little careful with that. But you're going to sew all the way across. This is where I am going to go ahead and just trim out any extras. If I didn't sew quite straight, it's not that big a deal. Trim out those extras now. I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. I'm going to be careful. And can you, I think you can see, maybe it's hard to see on the camera. There's my basting is over here. So I don't have to worry about seeing my basting. I did pretty well with that. So trim all this out. Get all of that. Come back to this end here, and I didn't have my pocket quite straightened up, so I'm going to trim that out here in a minute. But see how I'm just, this is going to help when we turn it inside out. It's going to make our corners look much crisper. So I'm just going to grab my little bit of pocket here. That is a little bulky, so I want to get rid of the bulk. And then I'm going to give you one more little tip here. All right. Okay. The tip I'm going to give you is right here where we sewed in. Okay, so where we sewed in right here, that is, we're going to come and we're going to use our scissors and we're going to be super, super careful. And we're just going to do a little cut. And just go right up to, but not cut through my stitching. And that'll give a nice turn. So anytime you're doing that, you're going to go right into, and right into where that stitching was. But don't cut it. You can always put it like a little pin there. If you're afraid you're going to cut that, you can always put a pin in that area so you can't cut through. And now, let's go ahead. This is always the test to see, did I do it right? Because now we're just going to push everything through that opening. And it looks like a little jumbled mess right now, but I promise it's going to come out. And there you can see there's my decoration. I did not sew my ribbons in, so that was a bonus. And I have to admit, I did forget one thing for our class today here in the studio. And what I forgot was it's called a point turner. It's actually what helps you get your the points on the edge of this. So like these points right here helps you get that nice and well, pointy, I guess is the thing. And so as I get there, Michael sells a great point turner. Like I said, I forgot mine today outside the studio. What I would suggest is you need about 3 of them, some all over in your house, like I do with my reading glasses. I have extra pieces of reading glasses. I have extra pairs all over. So there we go. So guys, we're almost there. Look at that. Isn't that cute? I gotta get that point out a little bit better here. Try to go all the way in. Right. I think you guys are seeing that. And then this is all right here. So at this point, you're really, you know, wow, wasn't that easy? I mean, wasn't that fun? And I'm going to come back here for a minute because that was really super easy and fun and just quick. This piece down here, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to stitch. So you can either straight stitch right down the center, and that will help hold this piece down here. Or you can also go ahead and do like a couple different rows. And that's what I did on this one because I wanted to have a place for my stylus. So it really kind of is up to you. If you're going to have a place for the stylus, you have to make sure that you have enough room, right, to put your tablet in, as well as, you know, your stylus, your cord, all that sort of stuff. And so I just have to tell you, as we were talking beforehand, making sure cameras were all set up, all of us, and so I want you to write down what you think would be a fun thing to do with this. But we were saying that especially, you know, something like, you know, like this one, it's a blank slate in here. Nicole was saying you could like put extra rows of stitching and put makeup things in here. So brushes and different stuff like that. You could also, Vanessa was saying for crayons, you could make a little smaller one and put crayons for kids in there. And we were saying, Amy was saying all about paintbrushes and that sort of stuff. So think about everything that you could do. You could even have like on this side, have a little artist sketch tablet, travel organizer. That's great. You know, there's so many things. And we were also saying like for sometimes it's hard to find things for men, right? So a project is you could put tools in there, you know, all sorts of things so that the project, you can make it as big or small as you want, and then just do all sorts of stuff. So please put in there what you think would be a lot of fun to do for you, what you're going to make next, right? So let's go back to our machine. And I am truly, all I'm going to do, and I actually think I did this project a little incorrectly this time, but you guys will, in the instructions, it'll help you out. What I'm going to do is I am going to go back to my normal straight stitch. And honestly, I'm just kind of guessing here on where I'm gonna be. So I'm guessing here on where I'm gonna be. And then I'm just gonna start sewing. I am going to do a couple back stitches because this is going to be, you know, there's going to be a lot of stress on this, right? The other thing you can do is you can use like a triple straight stitch as well. So a triple straight stitch will go back and forth. It'll reinforce a little bit. So it'll reinforce a little bit. And again, when I get to the top here, I'm going to go back just a couple stitches, come back forward.
We've got some fun ideas coming up, Sonny.
Oh,
Doing
yay.
a larger version for grill tools, which is a great idea. Doing hairstylist one with scissors for scissors and combs and clips.
Great idea.
Leather or vinyl.
That's wonderful. Yeah, all of those. I love the leather and vinyl idea because then, you know, it doesn't really matter, especially if you think about it, the lining in the pocket. If that was out of vinyl, then if you have put makeup things in there or paintbrushes, you know, they could get the fabric wet. So of course, what a great idea, Vanessa. Thank you for that. That's really pretty cool. And Kathy, you did say, do you think you could make this with vinyl or leather? Yes, of course. And I think the other thing with the leather or vinyl, if you're doing this, probably, I would say, especially with leather, you're not going to put the batting in there, right? You're going to just use probably the leather on its own and a leather pocket with a little thing at the top, because leather wouldn't adhere so well to like the fusible batting stuff. So I think I would just be a little careful with that. And also with vinyl, you might have to adjust a little bit with that. And I know that there are some vinyls that have a backing already, so things like that. So just be a little careful with the leather. And if you are doing a lot of leather, you can either use a true leather needle if you are doing that. Leather needles have a little wedge to them, so it is made specifically for leather. I would only use leather needles on real leather, not even fake leather, real leather for that. So anything else, everyone? I see a larger version for grill tools. What a great idea. You would have to use leather for this one, but I see on those TV shows, those chef shows, you know, they have the knives and little things that are like this. Be careful, I shouldn't have probably even said that, but I think that's, you know, you'd have to be really careful with something like that. But leather would have to be used for that sort of thing. But I was thinking even canvas, you know, so many different things. But for us, for what we were doing, I'm really excited how this, I mentioned I made a few of these, as you can see, and I was like, I'm going to have like 12 different of the little tablet covers, and I only have one tablet. Well, that's when we started thinking, what else can we do? So any other questions, comments, anybody? I think you could do so much with this, but a lot of fun. Any questions about any of the products? Or this is if you don't have a sewing machine right now, the HD 6700C, it's a fabulous machine, lots of options, right? Time to start on Christmas presents. I agree. What a great time to start with that. So this was, again, quick project. Sometimes it's good to have a quick project, but hopefully you had fun. Remember, if you're doing decorative stitches, use stabilizer, use the right needle, use the right foot, all that thing. And you know what? I see someone, Kelly, you said, how do we close that? Well, again, I think I misrepresented a little bit. In the instructions, you are going to sew all the way around that bottom edge, and that will help when you flip it, it'll help to close it in a better way than what I did. Right now, what I'm gonna do when I go home, after we get done with class, I'm gonna use a little bit of Stitch Witchery. It's that iron-on stuff. I'm gonna do that. And then I'm also gonna sew around the outside edge. So you can do either one, right? So just a great comment, great way to do that. Follow the instructions, but if you don't follow the instructions all the time, you can just straight stitch around the whole thing and it'll give it a nice look. Use a decorative thread or something like that. Michael's has fabric in some stores, not all stores, but in some stores and definitely online. That's where I saw all the beautiful fabric that I was messing around with. So other questions? I think that's great. I appreciate you guys' time. And next, I think it's in 2 weeks. Is that right, Amy? I think we've got a class in 2 weeks. And is that going to be on embroidery, if I remember right? I think it's in the hoop project with embroidery. So that'll be a lot of fun. All right. Okay, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for spending some time with us and have fun making these. Go ahead and post these guys if you, make it with Michael's and Singer Sews, all of those places when you make these guys. Bye.